Welcome to Strategy and Tea, episode 20. Our guest today is Ali Meehan. She is a certified Avenue business growth coach and the founder of Costa Women, a community of international women living in Spain or moving to Spain, which she started in 2010. Ali called herself a serial expat. She has lived in Australia, the Middle East, Asia, and now Spain. She's going to share with us how networking can help you as an online course creator. So let's dive in. Welcome, Ali.
Hi,
Thank
good
you.
afternoon. Thank you
How
for
are
having
you?
me on this very weird afternoon. I apologise to everybody for my light, but we've got a weird sandstorm going on.
Yeah, they could see
It's-
also here. We live near each other. And yeah, it's like orange sky and everything. So we are
It,
lighting.
it reminds me of living back in Dubai because this was quite not normal, but it wasn't that unusual for Dubai. So yeah, it reminds me of living back there.
Cool. So let's start by your story. Tell us a bit about your story and how you got into what you do now.
Yeah, sure. So I call myself a serial impact, which is an integrated expat.
Hmm.
So I started my journey when I was in my 30s. I moved out to Australia for a while and lived just outside Sydney to experience what life was like living overseas. I had to come back because my father was not well, but that sort of put me on a journey for living in other countries. And in my 40s, I started working for a company who were based in the Middle East.
Mhm.
Initially, it was a position where it was an office-based position, but the first day of working, the man who owned the company announced that he'd been to an e-business seminar and nobody was going to work in offices any longer. Everyone was going to work from home. So he decided to close the office, and that was in 2000. So a long time
Wow.
before anything started, with people now working from home.
Visionary.
Yeah, very much originally. So I started working from home and then moved out to Spain and was working from home in Spain and then was asked to move out to the Middle East. So we moved out there, my husband and I moved out there, lived there for nearly 5 years, and then we moved to Thailand and lived there for nearly a year.
Mhm.
So I've lived in all sorts of different places, and it's part of that journey have really seen how important it is to build a community around you of people that you know that you get on well with, because you're living in a foreign country. There's different rules for wherever it is that you're living, so it's really important to have that community around you. So that's just me in a nutshell.
Nice, super interesting. And I am sure you have thousands of stories to tell from all these different places. But now let's go focus a bit on the networking strategy and how this can help our audience. So, in your opinion, how networking can help online course creators?
To start with, I think it's good for getting your message out to different people, because there are now so many online courses, particularly since the pandemic. More people are putting things online. So there are so many courses. So to actually go along to a networking event, whether that's a physical event or a local physical event or an online event, you can then tell your story to more and more people. And I think it's also really good for sharing what you do, because quite often we sort of decide what we're going to do, but then maybe we don't actually check with people who will be our audience whether that's a course that they would like to do. So you could use networking as part of your research as well to find out what challenges people are facing and whether your course that you're offering can actually help them with that. People obviously buy from people they know, like, and trust. So to go out to more networking events, I think, is really important, and to tell your story to as many people as possible. If social media wasn't around, then this really would be one of the main ways that you would go out to network. and tell your story to people. So I really love networking. I think it's a great underused tool. I think people don't embrace it as much as they could do. And yeah, I just think it is part of it should be part of your marketing mix.
Yeah, and I love that you bring the validation because this is a important part of the course creation process. Like before you start creating your videos or preparing your slides and your workbook, yeah, you need to validate your idea. And it's interesting that you bring how you can use networking for doing that and for do your research before you actually start producing your course. So this is a great idea. What would you say is the most common myth around networking?
I think the thought process that networking doesn't work,
Mhm.
because people go along. I call it the spray and pray method. They go along with their business card, they spray it around the room at so many people as possible, and then hope it lands on someone that's going to buy what they want. Whereas
Mm,
if they go out to a networking event with their hands outstretched saying, what can I help you with, rather than grabbing what they want themselves back, I think then they will have a completely different experience of networking. So I've met, I work particularly with women. I've met women that go once and then they don't come back because it doesn't give them a sale. But it
mm,
could take a very long time before they get a sale. So it's a very strange view of networking. You know, you wouldn't post once on Facebook and then say, well, that didn't work, would you?
yeah.
You have to be consistent with any of your marketing, and if you look at network as being part of your marketing, then really it has to be a consistent program that you have to build into your regular diary, that you will go to some networking events.
Yeah. And this is about the expectations, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would say one of the biggest struggles is people going along to events and not actually having a plan for what they want as an outcome from that event. They just go along. Quite often, I'll go to events and women have forgotten their business cards. They haven't brought a flyer. They haven't even, maybe if they've got a sample of something that they offer, they could bring along samples.
Mhm.
So that because when we see something, we more remember it.
Yeah.
So if you bring along a sample of what you do, then people will probably link you back to that sample.
Mm.
So I think it's important from that perspective as well. Yeah.
Good. So let's say for someone beginners in the networking scene, where should they start?
So I would start by looking at whether their target market will actually be at the event, because
Mhm.
there's all sorts of different networking events for different types of genres. For instance, ours are only for women, but there's all sorts of mixed events, and some are for more tradespeople, and some are for more coach type people. So really just find the networking environment that is good for your business. And that can be either online or locally. Connect with the organizer before you go, especially if you're new, and ask them if they can introduce you to a few people. And quite often we can see on Facebook or however we've signed up, normally we get an idea of who's going along. So there you could actually start researching the people that are going along and looking at their Facebook pages and finding out a bit more about them. But yeah, definitely connect with the organizer. And practice makes perfect. So it's a great place to practice telling people what you do. And the more you actually hear it in your head, the more you realize, actually, I can do this. You know, this is my business. This is what I am offering to people. And you also, it's a great place for tweaking what you're doing as well. You know, as you tell your story to people, maybe you'll hear the other people in the room or the other women in the room telling what their story is. And that maybe give you some ideas for other ways you could share what you do as well to other people.
Yeah. Yeah, it will be a great place to learn from others, even how to communicate or express your story. Lovely. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Cool.
Obviously, you and I are both introverts, so it
Yeah.
can be a bit, it can be a bit of a challenge to go along to a networking event. But that's why you really need to get the help from the organizer or other friends that maybe you say, can you come along with me? Just because maybe you know you don't want to walk into an environment when you're on your own. So that's another tip that they could use. Yeah.
And they can also search for things that are smaller. You don't need to go to a huge
Exactly.
networking. You can
Yep.
event. You can do something more intimate and with
Yep.
few people, and you have the opportunity to speak to them like one by one. And yeah, as an introvert, you prefer like smaller groups, so you can go and search for this kind of event.
Yeah, and search for small events, and then you can gradually build it up as you get more and more courage about what you're sharing. Then that's a good way to start.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you for the tips. So what is the strategy you recommend the most in networking?
So as we said a little bit earlier, make a plan. So what do you want the outcome to be? So is it just to share your message to the women in the room? Is it to grow your network? So particularly for us, people living in another country, maybe it's to just grow the network and find out what other people are doing. Or maybe, and this is a big hint, is it to help others? Because people will more likely to remember you if you actually go along and offer to help them with whatever it is that they're doing. And I think women are particularly good at actually helping others. And maybe that, somebody gives a presentation of something that maybe you don't necessarily want, but you probably know somebody that might want it. And then you can make that connection as well. So that would be, and just make sure you've got a strategy. So don't just turn up and think it's not like a coffee morning. You can't just turn up and think, I'll just have a cup of coffee and then sit there and wait to see what happens. You really do need a strategy to work out why you're there and what the benefit is.
Yeah, and I love that you mentioned this, because it's like in any of these live interviews that I am having, it's something that is all the time there. Like, you need to think about why you want to do this and what is the goal, and make a plan, because otherwise you just are trying things but without a reason. It's highly difficult that works if you don't have a goal or you don't know why you are trying to do this. So
exactly. Yeah. No, exactly.
So do you have a last tip that you want to share around networking?
I would say my number one tip is follow up. I go to so many networking events and people meet other people and they exchange business cards and then tumbleweed, nothing. You don't hear anything from them ever again. You may see them never again. There's no follow up. So I would, whenever you connect with somebody new, I would ask them, I'd like to have another conversation with you, or I'd like to follow up. Where do you want me to follow up? Because not everybody uses the same platform. So some people prefer Facebook Messenger. Some people like Facebook just for their family, but they are quite happy to get an email, or somebody uses Telegram. So, what is the best platform to follow up? Oh, and another one, please don't add people's email addresses to your database without asking them. Please, yeah, it's against GDPR, the data protection, but also that it just gives you a bad reputation yourself, but also your email list becomes worthless then, because you've just dumped a load of people in there that really aren't your target market and don't want to hear from you because they're not going to buy what you're offering. So yeah, please don't do that.
Yeah, and about the follow-up, yes, this is something that is it's like a huge part of the, not just going there, but what you do later and how you follow up with the people. Usually, how long after the event you will say, like, it's a good time framing for
I'd say no more than a couple of days. Because people will remember you instantly. Business cards, it's quite a good idea to think about having, I've got a photo of me on my business card, because then people remember who you are. So because we pick up so many business cards over the time that we may not remember people's names, but we always remember a face, or we, try to remember a face. So make sure your business card is also friendly, and people, you've got on there how to contact you and your business, but also your photo.
Yeah. Something that I do all the time when I send a follow-up message is just writing down also where I found that person, how we met, as a way also for reminding them, but also for me, if I go back later to that message, I will have a way to remember myself where I meet that person for the first time.
Yeah, and it's also good to have a list that you keep of where you met people, and maybe some things that they said. So maybe if they said they like going skiing, make a note of that, because then you can refer to that at some point in your conversation in the future. So the personal information that they've shared with you is always good to keep as a reminder of, things that you can go back to them about.
Yeah, and that way it will be like easier to keep the connection and to grow that. Even if you don't like, for example, skiing, but maybe you know someone or you find
Exactly.
something related and you say, oh, I find this, maybe you want to check it or something. So it's a great way to build that relationship. So I love it.
Yeah. I once had a client in the Middle East who he was buying our product that I was selling, and then he decided to move to a competitor, which was fine. But I was going to a conference and I thought he'd probably be at the conference. So I just sent him an email and said, are you going to be there? It'd be really nice to catch up, even though he hadn't bought my product again. And he sent me an email back and said, okay, I'm going to sign. I'm going to go ahead with you. But it's those things, the fact that, say, were you skiing there? Maybe you message somebody in 3-6 months' time and say, hey, did you know that there's snow on the Sierra Nevada, which is local to us? But, those things, because that gives you a connection back into that conversation again. So maybe you had a conversation, it didn't go anywhere, but there's no reason why you can't go back to that conversation in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so now one last question that I like to make to all my guests. What is the compliment from a client that has touched you the most?
Yeah, now I would give everybody a tip here, because I've actually, when I get a compliment from somebody, I keep them on my phone. So I have a folder on my phone with photos of where I take a snapshot of them, because we all go through times in our business where we feel this isn't working, I'm not getting, I'm not enjoying this anymore, it's really difficult. And then if you go to that folder and it's got all those people in there and the compliments they gave you and things they said, it reminds you why you're doing this. So I actually got this yesterday from a lady I was doing one-to-one business coaching with. And she said that I had quiet charisma and that anchored her. And she kept feeling that she felt anchored by me because I was quite quiet in the way that I came across to her. So I thought that was a lovely thing to say, because, an introvert, we are quiet, but sometimes you can use that, how you are, you can use it for good.
Yeah, and it's so connected with the idea that I always say about how you should embrace your uniqueness. As we are introverts, and it's okay, we are having the best features from that characteristic to our businesses and our lives. And this is something that people will appreciate. So it's lovely that, it's like, it's your personality and your unique combination, what they appreciate. But it's lovely that they say in this nice way.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate it. Yeah.
So please tell the audience how they can connect with you and learn more about your business coaching and all the things that you can offer.
Okay, well, they can, if they're a woman in Spain or thinking about moving to Spain, or maybe they come to Spain on holiday, they can join us at costawomen.com, which is completely free to join the social side of the community. And if they just put Ali Meehan into Google, I should pop up somewhere. They can connect with me through Costa Women. On the website, there's a contact form, so they can contact me that way too.
So thank you very much.
Thank you.
I really appreciate you by sharing all your expertise with us and these tips around networking. I hope the audience could go and put into practice. So that's it for today. Thank you all for watching and see you soon.
Bye.
Bye.